and our education committee. Deborah Foster is not here, and if she were, or even if she isn't, I want to thank her for organizing and her inspiration to have these talks. And many of you have been to several already. So I thank you for coming back. And this is your first time. I thank you for being here. And there's a series of talks. So there'll be 2 more next week on Wednesday and Friday, same time, same place. And there's a sheet in the back that will tell you what they are. And I'm going to introduce Lucinda and Eva. In the meantime, for those who have been before, my colleague Mary Manley's here, who has been with the museum for 20 years, and we couldn't run the place without her. And we have 2 trustees here that are very important. 3 trustees. And thank you.
Actually 4.
Well, I'll keep
In the audience, you have 3 trustees.
That's right. See? It takes a village. And a lot of help, so thank you all. And so Sylvia Gonzalez is here. She's in the front row. She's a new trustee. Liz Markowski, Sylvia lives here in Middlebury. Liz Markowski, who is from Virgins. And Danielle Rougeau, who a lot of you know, she's with the college. And she's in the archives there. And she is the president of our board of trustees. And we have a past trustee, Gail Brayson, another past trustee, Bill Hart. Anybody else? And we have Roberta Coffin in the front row. Roberta helps out at the front desk occasionally, every Thursday morning. So come in to see Roberta. So it's my pleasure to introduce another colleague, Eva Garcelon-Hart, who is our archivist, and Lucinda Cockrell, who's a trustee. Eva is originally from Poland, and she came to the United States and has several degrees from UC Berkeley, and came to Middlebury, and we were lucky enough to hire, my predecessor, the prior trustees were lucky enough to grab Eva, and she's done a marvelous job in organizing and taking care of those customers or those clients who are interested in our wonderful archives. 100,000 works on paper, everything from photographs to scrapbooks to newspapers, and it's a great resource, especially for genealogists or if you have a subject that involves Middlebury, Addison County. I think it's all right to mention that her husband is here, Bill Hart, who teaches history, and so that's Eva. And she can tell you more about herself if I miscount it. Lucinda Cockrell, and you'll tell right away there's a difference in the way they speak. You know, and we have a Tennessee here. And so Lucinda...
You did all kinds of accents today.
Lucinda went to William and Mary in Williamsburg, Virginia, where she earned her undergraduate degree and later her graduate degree in museum studies. And she was at William and Mary. She met her husband, Dale, who is his specialty is music, and they originally came to Middlebury, but he was with the music department. And then they went elsewhere, and then they were smart enough to come back. They live in Lincoln, Vermont, and we were lucky that she got down the mountain. So, and she's done a marvelous job in working with Eva weekly for a day each week, if not more, in the archives. So it's my pleasure. I've enjoyed working with both our speakers, and they're very knowledgeable, and they happen to be good friends.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Before we begin our talk, I just want to also remind you about upcoming event at UC Library this coming Tuesday. at 5:30, Lucinda and Elizabeth Dow just published this wonderful book, How to Weed Your Attic. And it's a great manual for anybody who is interested in their home archives and how to evaluate whatever they inherited or collected. And so I highly recommend this talk. Wonderful book, 5:30 Tuesday, UC Library.
It's sponsored by the Sheldon.
Yes, and it's co-sponsored
by Bill Slick.
Yes. So thank you for coming, first of all, in these very springy conditions. So the title of our talk today is somewhat ironic, Never Meant to Last, because ephemera collection forms a sizable portion of Sheldon archives. It can be, I sometimes think about ephemera as sort of bric-a-brac collectibles, but on paper. And the size of each item can vary from tiny, like the size of a stamp, to huge, the size of this screen. And it's often fragile and frequently presents a challenge to managers of collections like myself, because we often ask ourselves, looking at pieces, what really it is. With books, photographs, and other items, it's kind of developed knowledge, and we know how to catalog, describe, and store them. Ephemera, every piece is different, so it creates some sort of challenge for all of us. And until not that long time ago, visual collections were not really considered important source of scholarly information. Researchers just look at photographs or ephemera and they just enjoyed them, but they never they didn't consider it necessarily of high scholarly value. It all changed during last 20-30 years, and now we basically now we even have ephemera conferences, ephemera societies, ephemera encyclopedias, so it's really very helpful for us when we look at our collection. Some of you, I hope most, may be familiar with this individual. This is Henry Luther Sheldon, the founder and principal collector of our of what we right now preserve here at the museum at the Stewart-Swift Research Center, which for those of you who didn't visit at the archives is located in adjacent building behind the museum, not very visible from the front. However, it is there, so please come over. Mr. Sheldon was a passionate about local history, but he also was curious about communities outside of his immediate community. And he collected persistently and often indiscriminately by visiting local families, advertising in newspapers, corresponding with collectors all over the country and outside sometimes. But he also had probably some sort of premonition or ability to foresee that these small or various pieces of imagery mostly, or pieces of ephemera, as we lump it in this category, at some point may be of value to future generations. So he collected them, and because of it, we right now are considered the best documented community in entire New England.
It's my turn.
Oh, and I forgot, I'm very sorry. It was stolen, my one phrase. I was going to say that ephemera presents challenge for us, managers of collections, but your challenge today will be to switch from one accent to another.
Okay. All right. Guess which one's Polish and which one's Southern? How many of you collect something? All right, okay, just like Henry and just like me, my husband calls it my disease. Because I do spend some money on mine, not a whole lot, but I collect postcards. And postcards do fall under ephemera. So you'll see a postcard come up. And, you know, like Henry, Middlebury's very much richer for his collecting. So hopefully you all are richer for your collecting. And then as far as ephemera goes, you know, we all have it. You know, you may not have the same disease I do, but you do have ephemera. All of you probably have it in your pocket or in your purse. Do you have a receipt? Do you have a bookmark? Do you have a ticket? Do you have, just think about things, a brochure that you picked up, a business card, you know, one of the cards you get at the dentist that tells you to come when you come back. All that's ephemera. And we have all of those things here at the Sheldon from sometimes the 18th, mostly the 19th, 20th, 21st, all these centuries. And they tell stories and they bring context and we can pull all these things together and they become rich resources for study, for scholars, students, and for future generations. So, to give you more of an idea, ephemera doesn't always have to be paper, too. It can be ribbons, political buttons, things like that. Menus, that's souvenirs that you collect. So you get the idea, but Eva's going to give us now, we're going to switch to that back, a better, more definitive definition of ephemera.
We will try at least. So what really is ephemera? The rise of consumer culture and market economy during the 19th century led to advancement of printing techniques, including the ability to print in color, and that in turn led to mass production of advertisements. Ephemera of yesterday and as today were inexpensively mass-produced on cheap paper and maybe on some other materials, but in the archive I only take care about paper, therefore, you know, that's why I'm referring to paper. So it was produced on cheap paper for everyday consumption and often discarded, as we discard today's ephemera as well. The term stems from the Greek ephemeros, meaning lasting a day, and suggests the fleeting and quickly forgotten nature of these objects. 19th century ephemera are intriguing visually for its color and design, which you will see in a second. It also provides a rich social commentary about what people were thinking in the past. Ephemera came in many formats, from small trade and greeting cards, even tickets, pamphlets, menus, calendars, trade catalogs, to simply informative broadsides and sometimes oversized posters, which we also categorize as ephemera. The Sheldon ephemera collection focuses on local Vermont history, but it also reflects the national history. The images are often produced nationally as stock images and then used by Vermont printers for local businesses. And this is, by the way, beginning of contemporary visual culture. The greatest strength of our Sheldon ephemera lay in the realms of agriculture, local commerce, medical practices, politics, sports, and entertainment. There are also advertisements of religious and temperance movements, all kinds of holidays, war efforts, Civil War, World War I and II, and scores of other subjects. Lucinda and I will present just a fraction, a sample of what we have relating to business advertising, sports, recreational activities, performance and entertainment, to provide a glimpse into life in Middlebury, late 19th or actually second half of 19th and beginning of 20th century.
So here we have some pamphlets. You all know what a pamphlet is, folded document. This got multiple pages. Both of those have multiple pages on it. And this is, can you see the stamp? It says Sheldon, well, the one at the top is the Sheldon Museum, which Henry put on things, Eva tells us. But this says Sheldon and Company Druggists. So, a lot of times pamphlets, trade cards are mass-produced from somewhere else, but the local person stamps their stamp there, and so you get it from that place, and you know that you can buy Diamond Dye from Sheldon and Company Druggist. Well, this Sheldon happens to be, the Sheldon and Company was owned various times by Henry's brothers, Harmon A. and Homer. Henry had these brothers, and they're all H's. Harmon, Homer, Henry, and
Horace.
And then Harmon had a son named William H. So Harmon, Homer, and Harmon's son William owned Sheldon and Company. There's a test at the end. Okay, got that? Anyway, Sheldon and Company's owned by Henry's bunch. Got that? Brothers and nephew. And they are at the H.A. Sheldon block, 44 and 46 Main Street. Now, I don't know Middlebury very well, so I can tell you these things, but don't ask me exactly where that is. But you all probably know more where that is in comparison to Middlebury. But anyway, that gives you some context of what we're talking about. And then Diamond Dye, I won't go on, but Diamond Dye was a very popular dye, and so easy to use that even an elephant could do it. Got it? And it's very well known. It was produced by the company Wells, Richardson and Company from Burlington, Vermont. So I love this because it's all Vermont going on. And the building in which that company was started is still extant in Burlington on College Street. Still looks very much like it is in the National Register of Historic Places. So I just love how these stories come up and out. The pamphlets are fun. They're full of dyes and how to do it. And you can see this lady is showing these other women how to dye their stockings and things. And then this elephant dude over here. Now this comes up from Jumbo. I don't know if you. Jumbo was really popular in the 19th century. Anyway, I'll shut up because I can go on and on about this. You can tell. But this ephemera has all kinds of context, and you can tell there's a whole bunch of stories behind here. But suffice it to say, it's a Vermont company, very popular, and Wells Richardson and Company really was one of the forerunners of mass marketing this beautiful 5-color lithograph process and getting it out there to the public. Okay, I'll speed up. So we have solar tip shoes, and that's going to be Sheldon and Company again. See here, it's another mass-produced, and it's Sheldon is stamped here, so he's stamping it, and it's a trade card. So it's a trade card, meaning it's a card explaining a company's trade. You don't trade it like a baseball card. That came later. But it's a trade card, meaning it's advertising a trade, a company trade. So this is solar tip shoes by the John Mundell and Company in Philadelphia. and it's the children's shoes, they don't wear out because they have these metal tips on them. So again, this is a chromolithograph process that became popular during the 19th century. Trade cards and catalogs and ephemera, these remain extremely collectible even today. And we have, the Sheldon has several solar tip shoes in their collection. And we have Hampton Watches. And can you see who sold these? Anybody know Simeon? Do anybody know Simeon? I didn't know Simeon either. But he's a jeweler. He was. I tend to think these people are still alive. He was a jeweler and watchmaker in Middlebury. He was also at the Sheldon block, north of the bridge over Otter Creek. Jewelry, clocks, fancy goods, and he and Everett P. Holton also was in the business with him. And the Sheldon, we found out,
We have several pieces in our collection. One of them includes an innards of the clock made from ivory.
that he made. So we get excited and we can start putting all this together, and you find out we have all these artifacts in the collection, and then we can do a whole exhibit on Simeon. And I'm sure you all really want to see that. So this is, but he also sold these Hampton watches. The timekeepers are astonishingly accurate, wonderfully durable, and beautifully finished. The guarantee with each movement is also without limit. Buy and try Hampton watches. And the label on that front says, Grandma says we little witches made her drop a dozen stitches. But though we have hunted o'er every place, the lap, the floor, not a drop stitch can we find. Grandma must be getting blind. But if she's blind, I'm sure she's quick to hear this Hampton watches tick. Now we have new home sewing machine. This is one of the newer models on the market here. And can somebody read this? Here's this lady talking to the man. Can somebody read it?
I will have a new home machine. A new home or a divorce? Take your choice, sir.
Talk about a modern woman there. And here's the back. So who's selling this is T.M. Chapman and Company. So we looked it up, and T.M. is Thad Chapman, had on Merchant's Row with Elijah W. Bird. And this is what they sold: lumber, shingles, dry goods, groceries, general merchandise, and sewing machines. There you go. Okay. Oops. Now for Eva.
So now we will be talking for a little bit about medical advertisements, and we have abundance of those. And they tell us a lot about medical practices during 19th century. So during early 20th century, over-the-counter medicine was a guessing game. Quack doctors and almost anyone with ability to mix up some kind of concoction could attempt to sell a miracle cure. There were no regulations, and phony doctors could say that the recipe cured just about anything. Many medicines were made from variety of non-medical ingredients, and often single bottle addressed a large number of ailments, promising basically to cure them all instantaneously. Traveling medicine shows attracted huge crowds, and the smooth-talking medicine men tricked them all. Most of these remedies did nothing to cure ailments, but made people feel much better for a short time as most included hefty amounts of alcohol and often opium. The advertisements we are showing today were used by local druggists, as Lucinda mentioned, including various Sheldons, and probably that's where he collected them in their store. As I have mentioned, the advancement of color printing was a big boom for business advertisements, so this is another great example of trade card from 1880 for Kendall's Spavin Cure stamped with Sheldon Company. Yes. The Kendall's Spavin Cure was invented by a Burlington Medical College graduate, Benjamin J. Kendall, for the treatment of bone disorders in horses' legs. In time, people began using it on their own aches and pains. It listed its alcohol content as 41%, so it was used for numerous conditions, including swelling, wounds, sprains. Obviously, it helped in a short run, I'm sure. In 1906, President Theodore Roosevelt signed into law the Food and Drug Act that changed the medicine business and forced Dr. Kendall to drop the word cure from his advertisements. In addition to business cards, there were obviously other types of business advertisements, trade catalogs, handbills, calendars, pamphlets, and more. This chromolithography, which is multicolor printing adopted by advertising industry, you see it's characterized by this kind of garish color, and sometimes on some of these advertisements you can see how colors bleed into each other. So this particular one features Frederick Douglass, a noted former slave, orator, and abolitionist who walks here with his wife, strolls in front of a pharmacy with his wife, Helen Pitts. Douglass carefully promoted his image to help his cause of racial justice, and as a result he was the most photographed man in 19th century. So his well-recognized image was often used by unscrupulous advertisers, obviously for their own benefit, not always in a flattering way. And this caption of this image features sarcastic exchange between...
So I'm supposed to read it. And
she would do a better job.
because it's supposed to be in dialect. So the newsboy's saying, Hi, ye dare, Jimmy, who's them folks is what's got the sulfur bitters? And Good Black says, I expect that's Fred Douglass and his wife. Golly, he's going to take the sulfur bitters for his complexion.
So such commentary, thank you. Playing on racial differences was a familiar theme in Ephemera. Some of you may have heard that Frederick Douglass visited Millbury in July 1843. Millbury was the first stop on his 100 conventions tour, and Millbury happened to be his first stop. It didn't go so well because some students organized anti-abolition kind of action, so there are some issues which this particular first stop was not particularly well received here. Here I have another medical advertisement for Dr. Sage's cataract remedy which claimed by its mild, soothing and healing properties, Dr. Sage's cataract remedy cures the worst cases of catarrh. This is a head cold, which I kind of am fighting. Perhaps this would help. That means cold in the head, coryza, and catarrhal headache. The remedy was then to be applied by using Dr. Pierce's fountain nasal injector or douche. It's kind of similar to a neti pot many people use today. So you see it was effective. So this is a trade card from 1871. Dr. Pierce's injector is the only instrument yet invented with which fluid medicine can be carried high up and perfectly applied to all parts of the affected nasal passage. So confident was manufacturer of Dr. Sage's remedy from Buffalo, New York, by the way, that he offered $500 reward for a case they couldn't cure.
Okay, so appealing to vanity and hopes of eternal youth are nothing new. Here's how you're going to look when you grow old. And it's a pamphlet, and all through the pamphlet there's before and after pictures of people. This is actually a advertisement for shaker extract of roots, Siegel syrup, which offered the cure to old age afflictions, including bodily pains, liver diseases, rheumatism, bowel problems. It promised elasticity and ivory whiteness of the skin. And it was actually developed by the Shaker community, who put out many medicines at this time. And it was a collaborative venture between Dr. White of New York and the Shaker community. And then we have greens, August flower, and German syrup. George Gill Green was a Union Civil War surgeon who later became a successful medical entrepreneur, and he became a millionaire marketing this stuff, the greens, August flower. It was a remedy for coughs and colds, consumption. August flower was prescribed for dyspepsia, indigestion, and liver complaint. Both elixirs were mostly laudanum with a tincture of opium. And you see who sold this was C.D. Earle. And C.D. was born in 1816. He died in 1905. He started a hardware business here in Middlebury in 1853, and his store was in the Smith and Sheldon block. And then he was in business with a man named Clay and a man named Barnum for a while too. Okay.
This almanac advertises Burdock Blood Bitters produced by Tim Milburn and Company of Buffalo, New York. Although it did contain burdock root, yellow dog, dandelion, other active ingredients, it was mostly again alcohol and sugar. The tonic touted many testimonials of people across the nation being cured for uncomfortable, depressing, sleep-robbing demon dyspepsia. Another example of publication by the same company is this pamphlet, How to Name the Baby, or the language of Christian names and their derivations. You would never know from the cover that it is chiefly an advertisement for burdock blood bitters and Dr. Thomas's eclectric oil. The first few pages do have a first name of, just the first few pages have the list of names and their meanings in alphabetical orders for boys and girls. Among these names there is Sigbert, meaning illustrious conqueror, or Orestes, mountaineer. For girl, Lucinda means light. Theophilia means one who loves God. And there is Eva there, means light.
So both our names were in the 19th
You are welcome
century.
to come and study these names. This is another kind of less colorful but kind of amazing document. It's Lilias Pinkham was one of the most successful American businesswomen of the 19th century. She developed an herbal remedy to treat female maladies, and in 1873 she founded in Lynn, Massachusetts, near Boston, the Lilias Medicine Company to market and distribute it. And the company was managed actually entirely by women, which we are still amazed when something like that is mentioned nowadays. Pinkham's vegetable compound was comprised of black cohosh, live root, unicorn root, pleurisy root, fenugreek seed, and up to 20% of alcohol, of course. It was immensely successful, and by the time of Pinkham's death in 1883, her famous vegetable compound was grossing $300,000 annually. And in 1925, annual profits peaked at $3.8 million. The company's success was partially due to Pinkham's wise and incredible decision to patent her recipe, but mostly by her savvy marketing skills. The company published letters from customers endorsing the medicine in the Pinkham pamphlets, such as you see here. The pamphlets include answers to women's medical queries. Women would write. Obviously, at the time, few women were medical doctors, and clearly they dealt with a lot of ailments they didn't feel like sharing necessarily with male doctor. And she provided this opportunity to write directly, which she then answered after her death. Obviously, her assistants did it, and probably during her life as well. Pinkham pamphlets were a means for distributing important medical advice about women's health issues, an era when it was direly neglected. At the end, her company became true multinational corporation with production centers in Canada, Mexico, United States, and changed lives of many American women by drawing attention to serious female ailments. And Lucinda recently at some garage sale found,
In Lincoln,
Yes.
at the town yard-wide sale, somebody had dug up a Pinkham bottle in Lincoln and had it there for sale for $1. So they were using it in Addison County.
Yes, definitely.
So I have it. I should have brought it so you could. Yes. So we know that Addison County was a hotbed for sports in the late 19th century. From the collection in the research center, because Sheldon has a number of ephemera things related to sports, but this is a trade card. It has nothing to do with sports, except it's actually an advertisement for tea on the back. But we have this nice little guy here in an early baseball uniform with no gloves, no helmet, nothing. This is it, the 1870s. It's in the verso is the Great American Tea Company. So the early days of organized baseball, National Baseball League was formed in 1876. And then today, of course, baseball cards really are tradable and popular. So this is the forerunner in many, many ways of a trade card, but it's all swapped around in different ways. Here we go.
Oh,
yes. Real fast.
Yes. So Sheldon Archives houses also 19th and early 20th century broadsides advertising baseball games in Millbury area between Millbury College and local teams and other Vermont teams. Some of them are really large, like 4 by 3, very fragile. It's actually amazing that all of them survived because they were affixed somewhere and Henry had to pick them up. Many of them were the still signs of being glued to some advertising pole somewhere in town. So we are lucky to have them. But we have many different teams. However, I just wanted to bring to your attention this particular series of posters or broadsides. These are of announcing game between Cuban ex-giants or Cuban giants versus Millbury College. Turns out, and I wouldn't know the story behind it, but Carl Lincoln, most of you know, did some research here, and obviously he knows everything about baseball, and he was amazed that these posters survived. They are supposedly completely unique on national scale, and he, due to his generosity, we are right now conserving them, and they will be eventually on display somewhere. So Cuban Giants was the first African-American baseball club in the country and played with against Millbury College several times in the 1890s. There is another sort of fun poster advertising. So despite the fact that it's not as colorful as others, it's still, they try to use a vocabulary which would be of some interest. Here we have a little pamphlet advertising billiard tables. So I just want to quickly tell you a little bit about Aaron Griffith, who was a carpenter born in 1821, who established billiard table company in Chicago with his brother in mid-1850s. They manufactured and sold new billiard tables, repaired and resold old ones, as well as croquet and other tables. The company had offices and warehouses in New York during 1870s, and they are well known in this area of building this type of equipment because these tables were beautifully carved and with decorative inlays, and they are still highly in demand today. And I was wondering whether, since it was advertised here in our area, if one of them or some of them survive somewhere in our area, because it would be interesting to know. And this is obviously this inlaid image, kind of fun with two dogs and people enjoying the game. Oops.
Oh. So we found these cards, 24 different cards like this, that obviously have been well played and well loved. And Eva and I had no idea what this was or what they were. Obviously it was a card game of some sort. They're hand painted, hand drawn looking things. And so me being the geeky person that I am, I belong to the American Ephemera Society, so I emailed the man that is the card specialist in the nation, and he said, "Oh, you have Dr. Busby cards." I said, "Oh, that's real nice. Could you tell me more about Dr. Busby?" And he said, "Yes, and then you should get in touch with the Strong Museum because the Strong Museum has the Museum of Play there, which they have games and dolls and all that in Rochester, New York." So I got in touch with them too, and we have one of the earliest, it's a full set of Dr. Busby cards. It's known to be the first popular best-selling card game in the United States. It fostered American interest in games and gaming generally in the United States. Ann Wells Abbott, a New England educator, supposedly invented the game in 1840 and produced a few simple copies of her own. Scholars believe that's why, and then in 1843, there was an improved and illustrated version that was put out by a man named Bradley.
That one.
Yeah. That's what happened. So it's also, and I don't have, so each one of these people, it's known to be a sight, it's played by sight, and each one of these, it's a family game, so it's a game about a family, and each one of these people have names, and then there's these little, this is a pie, that's a shovel up there, and that's an apothecary thingy, and that's a, I don't know what that is. But each one of them has one of these little things, and you know, I don't remember exactly how to do it, but anyway, here's a nice pristine copy of the game that you can see. And there's one, an English game, one that is in the Victoria and Albert Museum that was published in the 1840s with the box. So this is, even though it looks like it's not anything, this is a very important piece of ephemera that is very rare and that most museums do not have. A very important New England piece of history, and somebody really loved it. I mean, obviously, now Mary told me too, was an avid card player, right? I don't know that but somebody loved this. I mean, you can see. Oh, and also with the game, it's also the first game in which an African-American person is depicted. And unlike later versions of the game, this person is very well dressed and respectable. Yeah, can you see him? Yeah, here he is. He has a nice outfit on and everything. I mean, he's not, you know, the later versions, they're, you know, his face is different and he's got different clothes on, and it's obviously a caricature going on. But, so anyways, yes, sir.
Do you have a date on this game?
1840s, they tell me.
1840s, okay. I've seen the game at the American Antiquarian Society.
Did you? Yes, yes.
Tom's Cabin, but that's mid-1850s.
That's right.
So it's after.
Yeah, and so this morphed
Wow.
many times. And it's in the 20th century, there was a Dr. Busby family game. But if you see it in the 1950s, you won't recognize the little black man. Big lips, you know, just really bad. So it morphs, the people more, you know, it morphs into a different kind of, but Dr. Busby changed, but the game was out there in different, but we've got the earliest. This is the earliest version that you can see here. So that's why they're telling me they think it's the 1840s. So anyway, I could go on and just tell me.
How many cards were in the set?
Pardon?
How many cards?
24.
20.
Just 24.
We have them all.
Yeah.
And you know how to play it?
Yeah, I mean, I got the you know, I've got a folder this thick, you know, that I keep, as I said, the geek that I am, you know, I come in and she's like, what is she talking about? This is a horrible looking thing, you know. You won't believe what we got. So, yeah, but I couldn't tell you, but yes, I have the directions. Yeah, we have the directions, and I have all these things and the whole, a lot of information on it. So we should do some kind of a
Game night.
an article or something, because it's kind of fun.
That's fancy.
Yeah, I know. I was trying to make you look at it. And here's the postcard. So this is the email. This is your texting of the late 19th, early 20th century. Telephones are just barely coming in. This is cheaper than a letter. The early postcards, you had to write the address only on the back. The front part was just the early ones. were just for writing your message, but then people got to where they treated them as ephemera or anything else, they put pretty pictures on them. And then you couldn't write on the front, so everybody started writing all over the pictures. So before they had the divided back. Okay, don't get me into that either. So anyway, this is from, you can see this one is 1905. It's pertaining to golf. It was sent to July 16th, 1905 in Griffin Corners, New York. And it was sent there July 16th and arrived in the hands of its Middlebury recipient the next day. So it was from Griffin Corners and it got here the next day. So it was a very expedient way of communication at that time, the fastest. So that's what I mean. It was their form of texting, basically. And so you get all kinds of nice little, the chickens have hatched, the quilting bee is on, that kind. Daddy's sick, you need to come quick. Things like that. So they're a wonderful little microcosm of history going on. All right, we go into entertainment.
Entertainment, yes. So we have really, the ephemera collection is really rich in entertainment and performance advertisements, and attest to pretty diverse and robust social life in Middlebury and in Vermont towns during 19th and early 20th century. Audiences enjoyed circuses, theatrical performances, musical concerts, dances, lectures, vaudeville, and minstrel shows, of course. This one to the left is from 1850, as it says Middlebury, I think it's November something of 1850. And I wonder how this performance looked like in comparison to this fabulous poster, and of course the one to the right is also so interesting. This refers to a group called Daffy's Jubilee, a troupe of Irish actors that toured the country from 1880s through 1900 and made actually several stops in Middlebury. We have a number of these advertisements. Here we have these large posters of, as I mentioned, minstrel shows were huge entertainment around this time. And this one is, were common during 19th century in Middlebury, and this one shows Gorham's Alabama troubadours, which were, yes, we are trying to do some trick, I'm sorry, and it doesn't cooperate, but it will eventually. And these were actually, usually there were white men and women in blackface. This actually was performed by African, I'm sorry, what am I doing? Is it going to work?
It's me. I've lost it.
Okay, these are very fragile, and we have a little archival recording how such entertainment, how they sounded.
It's loud as they go. Got bones, big bones.
So sounds familiar, yes. They were basically presenting realistic entertainment, unique, picturesque and instructive, delineating in a true and graphic manner the merry moments passed on the old southern plantations down the south before war. So that was the purpose of it. We have many other broadsides also advertising different kinds of events. Here there is Professor Hahn, elocutionist and soloist and sword drill. So Millbury was a hot spot for all kinds of entertainers. Here it's Wild Jim, Indian Scout, Texas Cowboy, who rifle pistols and glass ball shot, and Wild Horse Breaker. So that was another show. Here it's just humble clam chowder. And here is Lucinda.
That's not me. Do you know Jenny? Anybody know Jenny Lind? Yeah, good. So sometimes you find a tiny little ticket, and once again, Lucinda gets real excited and rushes upstairs, and Eva thinks that I've lost my mind. But Henry was so astute. Somebody had this ticket. You see the date? Can y'all see it? Saturday evening, October the 12th, 1850. This was a real prize. Some lucky person got to see the Swedish Nightingale. Jenny Lind was the super rock star of the 19th century. She was Swedish, and she was well known in Europe until, not very well known in the United States, until a man named P.T. Barnum brought her here in 1850 and did his thing, and made her extremely popular. There was the tickets to see her here at Castle Garden in New York. Here she is. The tickets were actually auctioned off, and $650 a piece. He made millions of dollars. She didn't make very much. She finally got smart and said, I think I need a little bit more than you're giving me, and she gave all of her money to charity. But anyway, there are no recordings of Jenny because she's 1850s, and that was before recording technology. But let me tell you about the ticket. So there was a series of concerts during 1850 to 52. She toured America at the invitation of different people. This one was in Boston. This particular concert was in Boston. And at the Fitchburg Depot in Boston. And I don't know how much this ticket would have been, but what Barnum did was he overbooked the Fitchburg the auditorium, and so it was standing room only, and people got so mad at Barnum that he had to run out, get on the train, and sneak out of town because there were riots. So I'm sure whoever had this ticket, we don't know. There's no provenance. There's no history of who had this ticket. But whoever had it must have paid a pretty penny for it. I don't know. It says an average $1 class seats, but I'm sure they paid more than that for it. So Jenny Lind, she was an operatic singer, but there's no recording, but there have been people singing in her style, and this is from 1938, 1935. She evidently there's some high A she could hit that there's many writings about people crying when they heard her, and on and on and on. So anyway, gives you an idea. And so a little tiny ticket, but a huge piece of history right here in this museum. And the Shepherd family, this is came to Middlebury many times. Mary, what else do we have of the Shepherd family?
We have a cigar quilt piano cover that's made out of silk cigar wrappers.
Made by one of these people.
Made by, I think the woman,
This one?
no, I think it's the other woman. The one who has the long, well, she's the one behind the.
This one?
No, keep going, that one.
The lady.
I think she's the one who made it.
Okay.
And we have one of their instruments.
And one of their instruments. They loved Middlebury. Obviously, they were a singing family, but they were also abolitionists and sang moral songs and such. And let's see. Oops. This is Get Off the Track.
Over car emancipation rides majestic through our nation, bearing on its string the story, liberty of nation's glory. Rolling along,
Anyway,
rolling along,
you get the idea.
rolling along through the nation, freedom's car emancipation. Rolling along,
Emancipation.
rolling along, rolling along.
All right. And so it's another thing where you see all the different types of things that we have here in the museum. These are teeny tiny pieces of ephemera. They're cigarette cards. So very collectible, but this is sweet Caporal cigarettes. But check out these chicks here. I said, oh, Eva, why couldn't we have lived then? We could have been fat and looked good, and these are theatrical wonders of the 19th century.
And the names.
And the names.
Miss Monroe.
Yes, Miss Monroe and Miss Lucy Escott. It was promoted, so you promoted these cigarette cards with these collector. This is the American Tobacco Company. It merged with the American Tobacco Company. This company did. And this is about the 1870s, 1880s. They also did actresses, animals, military, fish, famous gems of the world, horses, novelties, naval vessels, butterflies, flags. See, we got the idea that this was collectible and people would buy them. So, again, the trade cards have morphed into being really tradable. Okay, we're almost finished.
So these posters from Vermont agricultural fairs, we have a large collection. Many of them you probably had a chance to see. This one among the largest. This one is from Vermont State Agricultural Society Champlain Valley Association in Howard Park in 1889. Among the attractions, you probably cannot read it, but I will read it for you. Among the attractions that visitors at the exhibit could enjoy was the grand gas balloon ascension with parachute drop from an altitude of 1 mile. There is no commentary what happened to this individual who had to fly. And these were printed locally, but received from stock company, and often they are very attractive. They use this great imagery. We had them on display on a number of occasions, but just a few. I don't think this one to the left was seen often. Some of you who visited our exhibit of World War I could get a taste of our collection of World War I posters, also fabulous, wonderful items which we have here, and quite a large number of them. We also have a set of posters from World War II, including this one, famous image of book burning. So, just to sum it up, ephemera, I mean, it's interesting and many people pay attention or don't pay attention, but you know, you can see from this, just this little sample, that they contain a wealth of information on variety of subjects about daily lives of Vermonters a century ago, popular culture, visual aesthetics, because you can study it from so many different angles. It also offers glimpses of in political life, social, religious, commercial, written resources often cannot provide us with. So you can use them, and many right now researchers are actually rely very much on this kind of imagery to study various aspects of history and culture. And we are very fortunate to have this collection, and I think I didn't mention it, I always was fascinated by this section of our collection, but it's extremely time consuming and challenging how to organize it and how to bring it to your attention. So I was very fortunate to meet Lucinda a couple of years ago, and she really we embark on this project, which eventually we would like to make it access through digital, make a digital access to this collection. So we are organizing it and putting in an appropriate conditions, because they were often packed in boxes and drawers, and trying to also learn so much about different things. Like I would never paid attention to this little ticket like this for Jenny Lind, because I would just, there are so many of them, but some of these little items all of a sudden provide a lens to these incredible events and our past. So I really think that this is a great collection to pay attention to, and I hope that we will be able to deliver to you at some point. We are rushing, but it takes an enormous amount of time. So thank you very much for coming. Thank you. And if you have any questions, we are happy
And I'm
to.
passing out ephemera. These are some of Henry's visiting cards or calling cards. You know, in the 19th century, or friendship cards, there would be a thing by the door, and you'd come in and put your card by the door. So he scanned some, and these are replicas. So thank you for coming out in the snow. So you have